Well, this is actually Beyond Pesticides' 30th anniversary, so we're excited about that. I mean, one thing I've come to realize, as many of you probably have over the years, that it's really critical that we be out there as watchdogs and advocates in the local community and the state level, that this issue, public health and environmental protection, requires constant oversight and advocacy to ensure protection. So I would like to welcome you to the program, which begins tonight and then tomorrow morning all day. We chose the theme sustainability because it's obviously a word that we all hear used daily. We hear it embraced by almost everyone. And in fact, if you look at national polling data, you'll find that 59% of consumers consider products' environmental sustainability to be very important in their buying decisions, and 56% note that they would pay a little more or significantly more for sustainable products or products that are environmentally friendly. Another study by the Hartman Group reports that 15% more consumers are now aware of the term sustainability than they were 3 years ago. So we're talking about 54% in 2010 69% in 2010 compared to 54% in 2007. Though, and this is really interesting, though only 21% can identify a sustainable product, and even fewer, 12%, can name a company that they view as sustainable. About 4 out of 5 consumers can't identify a sustainable product, and nearly 9 out of 10 cannot name a sustainable company. Now, on the one hand, this is good news that all the money that Monsanto is spending to advertise itself as a company committed to sustainable production doesn't appear to be working. So that's the good news of this. Ads we hear regularly on the radio, TV, are designed that say Monsanto committed to sustainable agriculture, creating hybrid and biotech seed designed to increase crop yields and conserve natural resources. Producing more, growing more, improving farmers' lives, that's sustainable agriculture, and that's what Monsanto is all about. The bad news, well, maybe that's the bad news for Monsanto, but the bad news for us is that we have not yet achieved the transformation through policy and practice that is required to achieve a sustainable future. Protection of the environment, the public's health, and the balance of our ecosystem that sustains the web of life. As inhabitants in the 21st century, it is really clear what needs to be done. I mean, I think we all have a sense in this room of what needs to be done. And those of us that are here at the conference know that, and we are here also to learn more about what we can do, both in terms of substance and strategy, to contribute to sustainability. The changes we effect as individuals do create the large-scale change we know to be necessary. Organic agriculture has grown to a $50 billion industry because individuals, like those of us in the room, have decided we needed to support a form of agriculture that was protective of the earth and biological diversity while producing healthy food products free of toxic residues. But the choice society faces today must expand beyond the increasing percentage of individual actions. This means that we as a society have to take on big questions with increasing urgency. And one of the reasons we're starting this issue with, or this conference with, the bee pollinator, the honeybee and pollinator issue is because of the urgency that you'll hear tonight. There are a number of choices which I'm sure you're aware of. Do we choose approaches that fundamentally manipulate nature and life through genetically engineered plants? Or do we advance practices that are in sync with our ecology and natural systems? Do we choose approaches that ignore the health of honeybees and pollinators, or choose a path of protection of sensitive species that are integral to the web of life? Do we embrace risk assessment approaches to managing toxic chemicals that ignore the most vulnerable among us, or establish precautionary approaches and policies that seek to protect those most threatened? Do we advance methods that ignore the social and economic impact on people and communities, or choose approaches and practices that are socially just? These are the kinds of questions we're struggling with throughout the next day. We come together annually here at the National Forum to check our progress, to ensure that we are in tune with the latest science, that we understand effective management techniques for land and buildings and share strategies to elevate our voice. The mysterious disappearance of the honeybees in extraordinary numbers not seen before is a complex issue, certainly, but it raises serious questions about agricultural practices and pesticide dependency, while the appearance of seemingly unstoppable bed bugs, increasingly resistant to conventional chemical-intensive control strategies, raises serious questions about structural pest management and pesticide dependency. Both these phenomena challenge our current approaches as to whether they're workable, unprotective, and unsustainable. Now, segueing into tonight's session, the disappearance of the bees alerts us to a fundamental and systemic flaw in our approach to the use of toxic chemicals, and highlights the question as to whether our risk assessment approaches to regulation will slowly but surely cause our demise without meaningful changes of course. In the book, A Spring Without Bees, How Colony Collapse Disorder Has Endangered Our Food Supply, the author, Michael Shacker, identifies humans' anthropocentric worldview as justifying our manipulation of nature to the brink of destruction. The bees should serve as a warning because our very existence depends on theirs. The bee problem, which is not new but just more frightening than it's ever been before, should be a wake-up call. It should force us to rethink how we approach policies that allow the management of pests with a warlike mentality and continued use of chemicals for which there are safe alternatives. While admittedly uncertain and filled with deficiencies, risk assessments established unsupported thresholds of acceptable chemical contamination of ecosystems despite the availability of non-toxic practices and products. In fact, the only acceptable policies in this crisis, this honeybee crisis and pollinator crisis, are those that eliminate toxic chemical use. The only acceptable legislative reform proposals are those that eliminate unnecessary toxic chemical use. For example, why do we allow chemical-intensive practices in agriculture when organic practices that eliminate the vast majority of hazardous substances are commercially viable? Risk assessments supported by environmental and public health statutes, in effect, prop up unnecessary poisoning. An unhealthy ecosystem adversely affects the health of all those living in it. So it comes as no surprise that people, along with other species, suffer environmental illness. So the ecosystem certainly supports all life. It is not a far stretch to focus on environmental illness in humans. What makes this period of history, though, for me, and I hope for you, exciting, is that the choice is clear and the solutions are within our grasp. I didn't feel that way 20 and 30 years ago. 30 years ago, we couldn't point to a vibrant and profitable sector of organic agriculture. We couldn't point to structural pest control companies that, instead of exterminating with poisons, are preventive and practices that eliminate the conditions that encourage or invite pest problems. They weren't out there. We did not have the numbers of people, an apparent majority of the population, according to the polls I cited earlier, who know that sustainability is important, but may not yet know how they can and should affect that personal and political choices on a day-to-day basis. So that's the framework, as I see it, for the conference. I appreciate all the work that you all are doing in this room in very important and critical ways, and welcome you again to the 29th National Pesticide Forum